One of the central themes of the Bible is the story of the Exodus. It's so central, in fact, that almost everything in the Bible that you read after the book of Exodus can be seen as commentary on this central event. Here we see that the Egyptians, the Pharaoh, forces the Israelites into labor, forced labor, slavery, and oppression. So the Israelites cry out to God, and God comes to the Israelites and seeks to set them free. Here we see that God is on the side of the victims of the Egyptian culture. Well, the question that Judges is asking is what happens when these people who are oppressed gain freedom and some power and then become the oppressors? What happens then? This is what the central issue for the book of Judges is trying to deal with. In the first chapter, near the end of the first chapter, you see this repetition where Israel is coming into the promised land, and on their way, they force people into labor. It's the exact same wording that we see in the Exodus story, forced labor. As Israel is gaining power, it becomes oppressive. And what's God to do then? What happens when the oppressed become the oppressors? Well, God hears the cry of the victims of culture, and Israel loses power. Somebody comes in and takes over for the Israelites. They defeat the Israelites and take over. And you see this cycle beginning to happen, where Israel is taken over by another nation. And then Israel cries out to God because it's oppressed. And then God comes and brings up a judge. It's not somebody to arbitrate between people as we think of judges today. Judge in the book of Judges is a political leader, a military leader who comes and sets people free. There are great stories about these leaders. One of the first leaders is this woman named Deborah. And Deborah is this prophetess who leads Israel out of oppression. Samson, the story of Samson and Delilah. It's another great story. So you have this cycle. What happens is that while the Israelites are under oppression, while they have a common enemy, Israel is united. This common enemy unites Israel over and against someone else. They can come together and unite. Their differences are set aside and they unite over against another. When Israel doesn't have a common enemy, then you have this phase where there's this repetition of this phrase. In those days, Israel had no king, and everyone did as he saw fit. This, as everyone doing whatever they desired to do, leads them over and against one another, so that they become oppressive to one another. Because if my desires conflict with your desires, we're going to have some kind of conflict, and I will try to have power over you. This is what happens when Israel doesn't have a common enemy. Well, in the end of the book, you see how Israel comes into power. They don't have a common enemy, and they end up turning against one another. There are 12 tribes. 11 of the tribes turn against another tribe, and you have this civil war. So the book of Judges is giving us a warning that if we continue to find unity over and against another, we will end up, this violence will end up imploding, and we'll fall into civil war. We'll just go out and kill one another until none of us are left. These are, in later books, you will see apocalyptic images, Armageddon, where people fall into violence and destruction, ultimate destruction happens. What the Bible is doing is trying to warn us against this. It's saying, find a better way to gain unity. And the Bible gives us the answer. We saw it in Leviticus, where it says, love one another. Build your relationships on love, on forgiveness, not on violence. So, that's my thoughts on the book of Judges. Love to hear what you have to say. Thanks.